All right, moving on to a story that's getting a lot of attention both in the media and on Capitol Hill today. 2 months and 5 days after the terrorist attack that left Ambassador Chris Stevens and 3 other American diplomats dead, members of Congress are finally starting to learn the real story of that night's events. Former CIA Director David Petraeus testified in front of the House of Representatives and also the Senate Intelligence Committees today behind closed doors, exactly 1 week after he resigned from his CIA post. Bringing us the latest from Capitol Hill is RT correspondent Christine Frizzell. Hey there, Christine. So let's talk about, first off, starting with the latest information coming out of the hearing. What are you hearing as far as information coming from David Petraeus' testimony?
Well, that's right, Megan. And the central question, of course, today is who knew what and when? That is, after all, the whole reason these hearings were called in the first place. Well, let me start with something that's becoming very clear, and that is that the information regarding these attacks in Libya on September 11th, the information has not so much evolved as it has completely changed around. As far as what came out of the hearing today, according to those inside, as you mentioned, these were closed-door hearings, and that is that intelligence officers on the ground in Benghazi have always viewed what happened as a terrorist attack. General Petraeus apparently today referred to talking points that were drafted about what happened. Included in those talking points, specific references to terrorist groups, Al-Qaeda and others. Those were apparently removed somehow as the talking points moved from those privy to classified information to other federal agencies. They were edited and changed around, replaced with words like extremist groups. The word terrorist also apparently taken out. You may remember, Megan, it was widely reported shortly after that these attacks in Benghazi had to do with a response to a video on YouTube, an anti-Muslim video called The Innocence of Muslims. At the same time, there were protests going on in Egypt about this video. People didn't like it. They found it extremely offensive. So immediately following that was the public sort of proclamation of what this was about. You may remember also UN Ambassador Susan Rice appearing on all those Sunday talk shows, 5 different shows in which she also brought up this video. That was the information that she said she had at the time, that this was a protest gone bad, and that was the reason for it. Well, as recently as this week, Senators Lindsey Graham, Senator John McCain, Republican senators said that UN Ambassador Rice is not to be trusted, and that if President Obama is even considering her name as one to consider for the future Secretary of State position, that he should rethink that decision. Well, Megan, I was at the press conference with the president on Wednesday, and here is his response to that.
She has represented the United States and our interests in the United Nations with skill and professionalism and toughness and grace. As I've said before, she made an appearance at the request of the White House in which she gave her best understanding of the intelligence that had been provided to her. If Senator McCain and Senator Graham and others want to go after somebody, they should go after me.
Well, I tell you what, Megan, here on Capitol Hill today, a lot of lawmakers have made it clear that that is exactly what they intend to do, that they intend to sort of cast UN Ambassador Rice aside, stop making her the scapegoat, and they will go after the president. This is, as you remember, an issue that became political at times during the campaign. It's one that a lot of people see as President Obama's biggest stain on his foreign policy record. And so they intend to make this an issue. In Washington, so many things that you wouldn't imagine do become political, and it appears that that might be what's happening in this case as well.
And Christine, we do know that the hearing obviously was supposed to be about Benghazi, but it kind of became the David Petraeus show. So what actually came out of this hearing today?
Well, again, these were closed-door hearings, so what we know is just based on accounts of those inside. But here's a little perspective here. If you drove by Capitol Hill in the morning, if you drove by some of the buildings where these hearings were to be held, there was a line around the block. Quite a few people wanting to get in, quite a few media organizations just wanting to get a glimpse of David Petraeus. Wanted to see the expression on his face, wanted to maybe yell something out to him. That didn't really happen. He was brought in very quickly through the doors and again testified behind closed doors. Again, Megan, of course, this is a very sexy story and has become that way just in the last week because of the resignation of CIA Director General Petraeus. From what we understand in these hearings, there was no mention of Paula Broadwell, only that he regrets the circumstances that led to his resignation. And also he mentioned that his resignation had nothing to do with what happened in Benghazi, had nothing to do with him not wanting to testify. And just one other thing, Megan, those inside did describe the general as appearing very somber today.
Interesting points. I know that Peter King said that he considers General Petraeus a great general and also a great friend. But people close to the case have said that the CIA timeline of the Benghazi attack shows errors but not necessarily failure in leadership. Is that the sense that you're getting from Capitol Hill?
Again, as I said before, like so many things, this has really become a political issue. It's crazy to think that the election, the presidential election, was just 10 days ago, and how things would have been different if this would have happened before. That is, of course, another question that a lot of people want to know is when the president found out. At the briefing I attended earlier this week with spokesman Jay Carney, he said that the president did not find out about the affair until Wednesday, the day after the election. So it's just so interesting to think how things might have been different. Not necessarily a different outcome to the election, but certainly different things being talked about by the media. Again, I think that it's fair to say that some really bigger questions are not being asked here as they're getting sort of mixed up in these, Democrats said and Republicans said. The feeling, again, just that there's a lot of missing pieces here, and they may be pieces that really have some connecting information. It's just sort of my hunch here that what's come out has not been all that significant, or at least all that new in terms of sort of unraveling exactly what happened with these attacks in Benghazi.
We do know that the narrative keeps changing and that the Benghazi attack, that this story is not over yet. RT correspondent Christine Frizzell, thank you for your reporting.